geez, that looked super exciting. The Amiga 500. Hello and welcome to the channel. As you may have guessed, that's what this episode is going to be all about. I've never really paid much attention to it. I remember seeing adverts like this back in the day, and then in the local classifieds the opportunity to purchase one popped up. The guy did not want £346.95 but only wanted a mere £20, so I thought it was worth taking a chance. The guy did say he was convinced the machine would never work again, but we shall find out if that's true or not right now. Just back through the door with the machine, nasty, scabby, dirty example as it is. The little hatch on the back is missing, though there is some kind of module in there, so I think we'll get that out first, just so it doesn't rattle around and get in the way. So whatever this thing is, it's in a sarcophagus that's been soldered shut, so I'll just pop it down here and we'll break that open in a bit. Ah yes, I remember now. This is called the trapdoor.
Somewhere in the dark and nasty regions where nobody goes stands an ancient castle. Deep within this dank and uninviting place lives Burke.
Hello!
Overworked servant of the thing upstairs.
Burke, feed me!
But that's nothing compared to the horrors that lurk beneath the trapdoor. For there is always something down there, in the dark, waiting to come out.
Don't you open that trapdoor! You're
Ah, sweet memories. Saturday morning children's television with a stinking hangover. I think I need to wing my way over to eBay and buy a lid for my trapdoor. So the case is pretty yellowed, but there's nothing I can do about that right now. Maybe a bit of retro writing when the sun shines later in the year. For now, let's open up this machine and see if indeed we have things lurking beneath the trapdoor, or whether we just have mouse droppings and spider webs as usual. Needed to dig out my Torx bits for this because it has Torx screws, which is a bit unusual, I guess. And it looks like somebody's been in here before because some of the Torx heads have kind of been stripped away and my bit's just spinning in there, so probably need to get those off with a pair of pliers and try and get some replacements. So once all those Torx bits were out, the keyboard and the front bezel popped off fairly simply, and that reveals a rather large piece of shielding and a floppy disk drive, so we'll get that off and have a look and see what's going on with the motherboard beneath. The shielding's just held on with a couple of screws and some tabs that you need to fold back with a pair of pliers, and then it just pops off, and that was fairly simple. Nice and dusty and just a little bit rusty. And so the motherboard is revealed, and it looks in pretty good nick actually, but caked in dust just like the shielding was. So I guess the first thing to do here is to get this floppy disk drive out, and it's held in by a combination of screws from the sides inside the case and screws that look like they go in from the bottom of the case. So we'll get those undone and then we'll be able to get the floppy drive out, and it looks like it's a model made by Epson, SMD 300. The motherboard just pops off. It's just held in by a little plastic clip at the front, so that's pretty nifty. And there's some slightly dubious tape over the top of one of the chips. I don't know what that's all about, but we'll peel it off and see what's underneath. And now that we can see everything, we'll get some of that crappy dust off and give the whole thing a good clean. There's some interesting information stenciled into the motherboard to do with revision numbers and artwork numbers and assembly numbers, and it looks like the board was made in 1988. And then bizarrely on another panel, B52 Rock Lobster. What's that all about? And it turns out, after looking into it a little bit, it was a guy called George Robbing who unfortunately died in 2002, but he worked at Commodore back in the day and did a lot of design stuff on the Commodore 500, 600s and on the budget sort of low-end models, and I guess he was a big B-52s fan, so he did indeed stencil B-52 song names into motherboards on these machines, which is Very cool. Okay, we'll take a quick whistle-stop tour around this motherboard, and the first thing we've got is two CIA chips, stands for Complex Interface Adapter apparently, and these enable parallel ports, serial ports, timers, interrupts, signals, joystick interfaces, and a bunch of other stuff that isn't taken care of by the other custom chips on the main board. Such as Denise, and all the chips on this motherboard have names, which is cool. Denise is a display enabler, I believe it's called, that takes information from other chips such as Agnes, which in turn reads information from the chip RAM to create the video output. And Agnes is fat just because of the package that this chip is contained within. There is also a thin Agnes, I believe, as well, just the chip packaging. Out of the box, the Amiga 500 has 512k of RAM. I believe it's called chip RAM, but I'm not entirely sure, as I am new to Amigas, and the motherboard has a stencil that says it goes up to 1 megabyte, and that is indeed what is in my trapdoor. Is a 512 kilobyte expansion module, so this machine has the full 1 meg. There's also space for further memory chips to be sold to this board. I don't know quite how that works, but I'll look into it. And this is Paula, and she's responsible for audio playback, floppy disk drive, control, serial ports, input output, mouse, joysticks, that kind of thing. And it transpires the chip that was under that tape is the ROM that contains the operating system called Kickstart. This is version 1.3 on this machine, I believe, and that will be used in conjunction with a kind of Windows-like shell for controlling your desktop called Workbench. All new stuff to me. And I nearly missed it because it's not written on the motherboard, but the chip to the right of Paula is called Gary, which stands for Gate Array, and he doesn't do much apart from a bit of bus control, and apparently houses supporting bits and pieces for the floppy disk control as well. There was also a big piece of shielding across the back that was held on by just the standoffs around the I/O, so it took that off as well, which I have here, so I'm just going to give that a bit of a wipe on the inside. The back of the board was immaculate, as you'd expect, with it being sandwiched tightly in here. There's no way dust or anything could get in. I was going to have a look at the floppy disk drive as well, and I was hoping to open it up and check the capacitors, see if it spells, if it's got them all right, and that kind of thing, but it's another sarcophagus. You can't break into this thing, at least not that I can see, so I guess that will have to wait, and I'll just have to get in there with some cotton buds and do as best as I can for now. And there it is. That's the main bits of this Amiga 500. Get it all put back together now, and that's it. It's all clean and ready to rock. And now we have to turn our attention to possibly the most disgusting keyboard I think I've ever seen in my entire life. Cheesy, I know, but I needed to put something in just to show how disgusting this thing is. Anyway, the first thing I think you should do here is pull these keycaps and see what we've got lurking underneath them. It's probably not really fair to be disgusted by this keyboard. It's what they were designed for. Kids playing lemmings and the like, munching away on their sandwiches, unable to tear themselves away from the action, spilling their Coca-Cola and dropping their crumbs all over the place. It's what it was all about. It still is all about that. Only these days for me it's more red wine and beer that tends to get sprayed over my keyboard, so I try not to do it with my good vintage stuff. Jesus, look at that. Even after I've vacuumed my entire house, my vacuum cleaner has less shit in it than this thing's got on it. I need one of these. At least it all looks superficial. We should be able to get it clean. And as expected, it all cleaned up pretty nicely. It basically just wiped off. Though, looking back at my bare hands there, I kind of wish I'd worn rubber gloves. There, much better. Now for the keys. To the sink. They need a bath in something strong and sterilising, I think. Replacing keycaps is one of my favourite jobs. Now these keys, you probably look at them and think they could do with a bit of retro brighting, but probably not really, because a lot of them have worn and the characters are kind of starting to disappear. So what I think I might do is I'll certainly try and replace those keys, but if I can get hold of a a replacement keyboard or a complete set, that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise I'll just replace the individual keys that are worn and then maybe think about retro writing. Check that out. It's almost so clean that you need sunglasses just to look at it. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. The keyboard's looking good, the case is looking good. Time to put them back together, and then all that remains is to have a look at that memory module, see if we can get into it, see if we can find out what's going on in there. So firstly, what crazy person decided to solder this shut? And it was quite tough solder to get off as well. I tried my budget desoldering gun that's worked really well so far, but it didn't like this stuff. And in the end I went with good old-fashioned solder wick, and it took a bit of work, but that did the trick. Haha, it seems like our Amiga brethren, that is coming from a PC person, had some of the same issues that we had. And here's a Varta battery that's spewing its guts all over this board. So we're going to have to get that off and give it a clean ASAP with a little bit of white wine vinegar and some IPA, and just get it the hell off there, and then give it a little test to make sure that those traces have remained intact. Here we've got some nice replacement CR2032 batteries from Amiga kit, and these have been put into holders that have 3-pin adapters that match the original holes on the board, and these can be used for either these memory expansions on the Amiga 500 and also the Amiga 500 Plus, which had the real-time clock battery actually on the motherboard. So at least one good thing about the 500 is if your battery leaked and killed anything, it was only going to kill your memory module and not the whole computer, which the 500 Plus, apparently that could happen to that. So we'll go ahead and get this fitted and get the thing put back together and returned to its rightful place in the machine. We're ready to rock and roll and see if this thing works. Cliffhanger for the video. I don't actually know yet. I haven't tried it. Usually I try things as soon as I get it, but I thought just this once to see how it feels. I would do all of this crazy business on the video and then actually reveal whether it works or not on the video. So I don't know whether my £20 has been well spent yet or not to mention all of the effort that I put in over the last few days and getting it cleaned up and stuff, and ordering and spending money on eBay. I knew I was going to get this machine well ahead because when I bought it on the classified, it was about 2 months until I could actually go and collect it because the guy was away. So in the meantime, I bought myself an RGB to SCART adapter, which also has the stereo sound output from the Amiga, and it's going to go into this crappy little 14-inch television, which I've got and I use for such things. But ultimately I want to get this onto a real monitor. It'll be a project for the future and probably a video for the future, because I believe there are ways and means of getting the Amiga to run on a VGA monitor, and I have many VGA CRTs sitting around for my PCs, and it'd be nice to get a nice little one set up with this permanently. The suspense is killing me. So we're going to fire it up. I popped in a game. The game is the Chaos Engine. It is a game for the Amiga that I have. I'm not proud of this, but I bought this about a year ago thinking it was a PC game, when I admit possibly had a couple of beers one night on eBay, and it turned out to be an Amiga game, and I had no way of playing it. What better excuse for buying an Amiga? So I don't know if the game works, and I don't know if the Amiga works. So let's see what happens. Looks promising. A Bitmap Brothers game. See if we get some sound. So it's all looking absolutely spot on for games. That's cool, and my Chaos Engine works, which is nice to know. Now this thing, when you initially load it up without a game, asks for Amiga Workbench v1.3, which I don't have. I do have other Amiga things kind of going on in the background here, which will probably feature in another video. So I do have another few discs. I don't quite know how this all works, but we'll try them and see what happens. So this isn't working, which doesn't really surprise me because I kind of knew that the version of Kickstart that was on that ROM that we took the tape off earlier has to kind of match within some kind of range, I guess. I'm not sure. The version of Workbench that you try to load in. So this is Workbench 3 that I have from a later machine. And I kind of knew that this was Kickstart 1.3 on the ROM. And here it boots into a thing called Amiga DOS, and it tells us that to run this I need to have Kickstart 2 or greater. So I'm probably not going to be able to do any desktop-y kind of things right now, but it's good to know that it works, and I just need to get the right discs or download the right images to go with the machine. So I guess that kind of wraps it up for this video. It's been fascinating for me, and it's my first kind of Amiga experience, and I know I've gone over a lot of stuff that anybody who's into Amigas will have probably been bored with, but it's the first thing for me, finding out that the chips had names and that it had a B52 song name printed on the motherboard was awesome, and that all the chips are socketed. And I've been googling, and I can see you can do all sorts of funky projects with these machines, building your own accelerators using Raspberry Pis and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that. This machine had a sticker on the front of it when I first got it. It was a Vortex Out Once, I think it's called, and I looked it up, and it's supposed to be a board that contains an IBM PC chip, so it's either got a 286 or a 386, I think, on it, and it sits between the processor of the Amiga, which I should have looked at. I think it's a Motorola 68000, and it also gives you full, like, dual, is literally a switchable 286 to Amiga or 386 to Amiga. Unfortunately, it wasn't there, but the guy who sold me it is still away from home, which is good, because his father actually gave me this machine until he gets back, and when he does get back, he says he's got some other goodies to give me also as part of the deal. So hopefully that might be in there, but you never know. Either way, it's going to be good fun messing about with this machine going forward. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, it'd be great if you give me a thumbs up. Criticism in the comments would be good as well, because I've no idea what I'm doing yet and don't get much feedback. And I hope to see you again on the channel, and any suggestions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.